Welcome to Same Spit Different Face Podcast, where my opinions is facts. And if you don't like my opinions, you can start your own podcast. And it's free. So don't forget to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. Also, for my Cash App, Hip Hop Artist of the Week, and Spit Squad merch, check the description. So, I am here with Samson out of Virginia. He's known as the Flying Saucer Man. He's one of the greatest young fighters on the come up. Um, just to give a small background of his historic fighting skills, man. In high school, he was a two-time state champ in wrestling. He was the Brazilian World Jiu Jitsu title champion at 17, y'all. At 17, most people haven't done it their entire life. And he was the bantamweight champ for Sparta Fight League and the featherweight champ, man. So um, I love his mentality. I love his motivation. And I think that right now he is someone that you guys need to watch because he's on the come up. So what I'm gonna do before we even get into it, hey, give them your Instagram because you're a fighter they need to know.
Okay, what's up, guys? My Instagram is the Flying Saucer, and saucer is spelled Sausser. The Flying Saucer, Sausser.
So man, so what got you into fighting? How are you a child prodigy when it come to fighting? What age did you start fighting?
So when I was 4 years old, that was the first time my dad took me into a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school, and I never looked back. I've been training ever since. My father ended up getting his black belt, and me and my sister started training that day, and we've been consistent our entire lives. Wow. And now my dad and my sister and we all run a Jiu Jitsu Academy together.
Oh wow, I did not know that. That's dope. What's the name of that Jiu Jitsu Academy and where is that, man? Do a shameless plug. Let everybody know where they can get some great training at.
So we're at Norfolk, Virginia. It's called Gustavo Machado Norfolk. We train Norfolk police for free as well. So we're always trying to make a difference in the community. Any local law enforcement in my hometown city, you guys can train for free at my gym. We want to help officers get the best training they can get.
Can I get an address on that?
Yeah, it's 3852 East Little Creek Road.
Okay, cool. And you know what, man? I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I like the thought of you giving officers free training because with everything that's going on now, man, I think having that training, it gives you that confidence to be able to defend yourself in different ways. And I know I know an officer out of Mississippi, and he stays in shape and he trains in hand-to-hand combat and everything. And to be honest with you, he'll beat you up in a second if you do the wrong thing to him, or if you try to if you grab him, or if you touch him, or if you he's ready to engage with you. And I think that every officer should be able to engage with someone. And I would much rather you knock somebody out than shoot somebody, no matter what the race, what the age, unless it's 100% necessary. So that's pretty cool. Now, tell me a little more about your career.
So I started training jiu-jitsu when I was 4, and my father, my sister, and I, every month, my dad would scrounge up whatever money he could get, and we would travel across the country just going from competition to competition, just trying to compete as much as we could. And he never forced us to do it or anything. Like, if we wanted to quit jiu-jitsu, he would have just let us quit. He didn't care. And I think that's what kind of helped me continue to do it, was that it wasn't like he wasn't a trophy parent trying to live through his kid. He was competing, doing his own thing. And so, I had the freedom to choose if I wanted to compete or not, and I just continued to do it. When I was in middle school, I started wrestling because at a young age, I decided, I wanted to be a fighter. I knew since I was 4 years old that I wanted to be an MMA fighter when I grew up and go to the UFC. So I knew that when I was in school, I was like, man, I'm going to need to box. I'm going to need to wrestle. I'm going to need to do kickboxing, and I'm going to need to keep doing jiu-jitsu if I want to be a well-rounded fighter, when I come up and I become an adult. So that's kind of how I came up. I was always just trying to become well-rounded in martial arts in every background.
So to get as good as you are, I know it takes some extensive training. So tell me about some of the regiments and some of the sacrifice that went into you getting as good as you are. And you said your father didn't force it on you, so you had to be self-motivated. And I also saw you posted a clip yesterday of you trying to cut weight and you were letting sweat off you, and it looked like someone had poured water on you. So talk about that and that dedication.
Yeah, so that clip, that was actually me helping out one of my close friends, Johnny Tama. He's a black belt world champion. Me and him have been training together. We were training every day, getting ready for the Pan American Championship. So he helped me with my weight cut. And the next day, I helped him with his. Cutting weight's kind of like part of the sport, you know. You want to get your body fat down to the lightest possible, you know, weight that you can, because when you and another guy have similar technique, you know, the size and the strength, that's when, you know, it'll come and start helping. You know, technique conquers all, but if you guys are very similar, you know, on the technique level, the guy who's stronger is going to have an edge. So I think that's why most people try and cut weight.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But it can be brutal, man, if you don't know what you're doing. There's like guys have died in the past from cutting weight, and they actually try to set up the competition so that people don't cut weight, but people will always find a way around it and just continue to do it. But it can be brutal, man. You can really dehydrate yourself and mess up your body and have a bad day if you don't know what you're doing.
That's interesting. So,
yeah.
Have you had any fights recently? And if so, how did that go?
Yeah, I just competed in the Pan American Championships. I went 2-1. I thought I performed very well. It was in the it's in Brazil. It's a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu competition. So people who don't know what that is, it's submission wrestling. So the goal of the wrestling match isn't for me to pin you. The goal is to submit you and make you tap out. So, you know, guys fight off their back. You know, you learn to fight off your back and use your legs to put guys in triangle chokes, arm bars, leg locks, all sorts of things, and strangles. So it's like a really complex, you know, style of sport. And when people get really, really good, it becomes like a chess match because there's so many different factors that come into play. And I don't know if you know what a gi is or a kimono, like the outfits they compete in. So you're able to use the belt. You can wrap the belt around the guy's leg. You can open the guy's gi. It opens up, and you can use those lapels against the guy and wrap him up. So it gets really advanced and technical. And if you don't train, you probably look at it and have no clue what was going on or whose foot is whose. And you know, guys get tangled up like pretzels. It's very technical and crazy. But I competed in there, and I haven't done a tournament in the gi since I was 18 years old, and I'm about to be 22. So I beat two really tough opponents. They trained at a school called Atos, and they're like the #1 school in the world. And it was a really cool moment because I was fighting them, and they were being coached by a guy named Andre Galvao, he's like some people call him the Michael Jordan of jiu-jitsu.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
So I was fighting that guy's students and stuff, and you know, he shook my hand afterwards. It was a pretty cool moment.
Yeah, man, that sounds amazing. So you talked about UFC. Let me ask you a fan friendly question. What's some of your favorite UFC fighters?
Oh man, George St. Pierre was definitely one of my favorite fighters. I grew up liking Conor McGregor as well. Everyone, you kind of love or hate Conor McGregor. John Jones, he changed the game with his like spinning techniques, and you know, he was one of the first well-rounded fighters. Yeah, I'd say George St. Pierre, John Jones, Conor McGregor, probably my favorite fighters.
Oh, them your top three. So
yep.
I know you say that you plan to get on to get into the UFC and do that. What are your plans for that, man? Tell me the strategy you have to get to that mountaintop.
Yeah, so basically, getting to the UFC, you know, you have to go pro first, and then usually you have to amount a pretty good pro record to get signed to a big organization like the UFC. So, you know, the ideal plan for a guy looking to go to the UFC would be to fight some amateur fights, get a good record. Also in the amateur fight, like the amateur fight leagues, a lot of guys can learn, is this really what they want to do? Is it worth it? Like, do they have what it takes? Get some amateur fights, get some cage experience, and then you want to go pro and usually get to like a 5-0, 10-0 record. Easier said than done. But usually if you get a 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 pro record, and you have good connections, people know who you are, because it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. So if you got good connections and stuff like that, and people start hearing about you and you got a good record, you'll probably get picked up by a big promotion like the UFC or Bellator or ONE FC.
That makes sense. Let me ask you a question. So, what do you think about WWE? Like, because you wrestle, so what do you think about that?
I used to be, when I was a kid, I was a big fan of WWE. I was really heartbroken when I found out that it wasn't like 100% real. Like, I thought it was real all the way, but it's actually just, I found out when I was a kid that it was scripted, and I actually went and watched it live. And I mean, they'll take a beating sometimes, but when you're up close, like I sat pretty close and I could see how fake it was. Like, they weren't really hitting each other or jumping on each other. So, I mean, I think it's cool. I think the WWE like generates a lot of money, but I think they're really big on like giving back to charities. Like they're always donating millions to charities and donating to the troops and donating to communities and stuff like that. So I think it's a cool thing. I think if people like watching it, it's cool. But I'm not really a WWE fan myself anymore.
Okay, that makes sense, man. So, tell me, do you have a signature move, or do you have, like, let's just say you've gotten down. I'm gonna just say a hypothetical score because I don't know how the score is kept. Maybe you can fill me in on that. But let's just say if the score is 2-2 and you need to win, do you have a go-to move, or is it based off of what you felt your opponent out to be strengths and weaknesses?
So, like you mean like in a jiu-jitsu match?
Yeah.
In a jiu-jitsu match, if it's 2-2, I was actually in that situation with a minute left, and I'm gonna say it depends on what your opponent's doing, because it depends what position you're in. If I'm on top and the guy's on bottom, it's not like I can go for a takedown. But if we're both standing, I'm gonna go for a takedown. So I'd say it definitely depends on what the guy's doing. I would say my signature move would be, like a judo throw, like flipping the guy's feet over his head in the air. I've always been big on hitting throws, so
yeah, that sounds nuts.
I would go for a throw and try to flip the guy over.
Wow. Speaking of just flipping the guy over and throw him over, this is a contact sport and it's definitely violent. What's one of the most gruesome injuries you've seen, and what's one of the most gruesome injuries you've given?
I'd say the most gruesome injury I've seen a guy post all his weight on one of his hands, and he put so much weight on that elbow that it bent the wrong way and it broke all the way through. That was probably the most gruesome injury I've seen. I was actually coaching a middle school wrestling match, and they were heavyweight kids wrestling, and they heavyweight middle schoolers. They haven't really grown into their body yet. They don't have good coordination at that age, and they drop all that weight on their hand. The kid snapped his arm in half, and the kid walked off the mat and was acting like nothing happened. I didn't realize his arm was broke. And I go, "What are you doing, man? Get back on the mat. You got a match to win. You're winning. Just keep wrestling. There's only a minute left." And then he lifts up his arm and goes, "How you want me to wrestle with my arm broken?" And his arm was dangling, man. It was the nastiest thing I've ever seen. I felt so bad. I started screaming. I was like, "Lay down, lay down." So that was probably the worst injury I've seen in like wrestling or grappling. And I think the worst injury I've ever gotten, I've been injured a lot, man. I'm a young guy, but I think the worst injury I ever got was I hurt my back earlier this year, and that was probably one of the worst pains I've ever had to deal with. Anyone who gets a back injury knows what I'm talking about, but back injuries are no joke. Like, that is the most crippling thing I've ever felt. That was probably the worst injury I've ever gotten, for sure.
Wow, man. But what about what's the worst injury you've given?
The worst injury I've given?
Yeah.
Man,
Oh, you don't.
I'm not sure.
You.
I've put a guy to sleep before.
Oh,
I've
okay.
choked a guy unconscious.
All right, that's cool. I won't make you get into how savage you actually are, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, when I would wrestle or do jiu-jitsu matches, sometimes you just fight a guy and never talk to him again, and you never know. Maybe that guy leaves and you tore his knee or something, or you tore his ACL or broke his arm, and you had no clue. Like, there's been a lot of times where I'm in matches and I hear pops and snaps, and some guys are just tough and push through it and won't ever say nothing. So I'm sure there's a lot of guys out there that you've probably injured or something that you never even knew about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is crazy, man. So, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Oh, in the next 5 years, I'd like to be in a big MMA organization. I know UFC is number one, but the thing with the UFC that a lot of people don't know about is there's a lot of like situations with fighter pay. There's not a fighters union in the UFC, and if you look at any other major sport like NBA, NFL, hockey, baseball, all those big major league organizations, the fighters have a union. Like they have a say in what happens, and in every other sport, the players make 50% of the revenue and the owners make 50%. But in the UFC, the owners make, about, I'd say 70, 75%, and the fighters make about 15%, 18%, So the thing with the UFC is they don't allow sponsors. So when I fight, it's not like NASCAR where I could just put any logo on my shorts and then get money from the company for the sponsorship. In the UFC, you have to wear like a Reebok uniform, and you can't make any money off the sponsorships. So I've heard a lot of pro fighters say they would make up to like $100,000 in one night for sponsorships. So other organizations that allow you to wear those logos on your clothes, they become more favorable because maybe when you first sign your contract with one of those organizations, it's usually not going to be $1 million contract. It's usually going to be like maybe $5,000 for a fight. So if I can get in there and start making, $50,000 from sponsorships, I would prefer one of the other organizations that allow me to do that.
Yeah,
so
man.
I'd like to be in one of those organizations in the next 5 years. That's my goal.
That sounds like a good goal, man. And I think you're well on your way, man. You got a very impressive resume that started at a young age. And just from talking to you, man, I understand that you got the motivation that it takes to make it and you got the skills. So I literally just believe that if you continue down on your trajectory and you continue to just work hard and not give up and not slack, that you'll be exactly where you want to be in a few years.
Yeah, man, that's all it takes is consistency. Everyone thinks it's Jedi mind tricks, but it's just you just got to stay at it every day, never stop consistently. It's no secret to it. It's just hard work, dedication.
You know what? Talk about this, right? I saw you doing some sit-ups that was crazy, and I started back working out like 4 months ago. So I'm getting back in shape really good. And you were like laying on like one of those plyo boxes and your feet were up on it and you were like kicking yourself up in the air or something. And I was like, are those sit-ups or for his... I'm like, that looks terribly hard. What is that?
So when I was a kid, I had like a really close like family member. It was like my father's best friend. And the guy was a workout. He was addicted to working out, man. Like this dude woke up every morning at 4 a.m., worked out until he had to go to work. And then he like left work, went straight to the gym and stayed there all night till he had to go home. And he used to just train me like my whole life since I was in 5th grade, and just, teach me how to lift, teach me all these different workouts. And he trained me for probably 10 years, and so I use a lot of the workouts I learned from him. Also, getting injured, you have to go to physical therapy, and you actually learn really, really good workouts that are sustainable as well that will help keep you healthy. Because everyone thinks, working out, you got to just destroy your body, but that's not sustainable. You can't max out every day and expect to be healthy. You have to try and build that farm strength and be slow and steady and patient with it. So all those workouts is just things I've learned over the years because I pretty much grew up in a gym.
Right. That makes sense, especially with your dad doing it. So is that a sit up? I mean, is that an ab exercise or is that for your legs? Like, what does it do? It looks very hard. Like, seriously.
I think you're talking about. I call those up kicks, but
Yeah.
it's like a hamstring and glute thing. I guess it uses
Okay.
your abs too, but it's if you're on your back and the guy's in front of you, you keep your legs in front of him so that he can't crash his weight on you. So like usually have like the guy will be holding one of your ankles and you have to kick him with your other foot, but you actually have to push off your foot that he's holding. So I do that. I do that workout to work my legs out to also get me better at like up kicking off my back.
I
So
see
if
it now.
standing over top of me, I can kick him in the face.
Because at the same time you kicking, you trying to release your leg that he has a hold of.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you kicking forward with one and kind of pulling the other one back to a extent, right?
Yeah, I'm pushing down off the foot he has.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I saw that and I probably watched it like 10 times. I'm like, what is he doing? Is this an ab exercise? And it's like your abs is the hardest thing to get, like you want them to get. So for me, I've shed a lot of weight. Like before the pandemic happened, I was like pudgy, and now I'm muscular and my stomach is down, but it's not where I want it. I don't look like you. Like you look like you do like 1,000 sit-ups a day or something, right? So I'm just looking at it.
I'm just malnourished, bro.
Uh,
It ain't abs. It's just malnutrition.
yeah, okay.
Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know, man. I remember when I was 15 or something, I just wanted to get abs really bad, and I started when you start becoming a teenager, you want to get muscles and stuff, and I got a $10 a month Planet Fitness membership, and I just started going in there every day, and just doing all the workouts that I learned from everyone. When you grow up in a gym, there's so many people who are physical trainers, yoga people, and also competing. And I competed in rugby. I did skateboarding. I competed in volleyball. I did Muay Thai, kickboxing. I did boxing. I did wrestling. I did Jiu Jitsu. So in all of those, sports, you learn different exercises for the sport,
right?
But that are actual, functional, good exercises. So I also just know a lot of exercises and movements from all those different sports and things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. So you touched on earlier like how you said your dad would scrape up money and get you out to those tournaments, man. And just besides making sure that you got your needs and being able to do something that you want to do like fighting, what is one of the impacts that your dad has had on your life?
Man, without him, there wouldn't be like a flying saucer who's a fighter and stuff like that. Like, my dad is 100% like the reason I want to fight and everything like that. My dad himself was a fighter. So to me, I'm a second generation fighter. It feels like I've always felt like fighting is what I was born to do. And, I'm happy with that. And it just feels like it's my destiny, man. I feel like I'm meant to take this route and become a fighter and like go down the path of the martial artist, and like enlightenment and stuff like that, and just try and become the best martial artist I can, and work my way up. And my ultimate goal, man, like what I would be like totally happy about is if I could make it fighting and then give back, and just have some, like, if you can have one kid say like, man, I wouldn't have done it, but then like that guy inspired me, then like you can say you did something good, So like my dad he's definitely the reason for like everything related with me fighting.
Yeah, man. And you know what happens a lot of time, right? When the parent or the brother or the uncle or some type of figure that's around a child, whether it be a boy or a girl, when they do something at a high level and they understand what type of dedication it takes, because this is what I mostly learned, right? For most people, when we notice that they're great at something but they don't make it to like the highest of highest level, if it's not injury, it's usually like life circumstances, or they just didn't have the knowledge of how to maneuver themselves when they was younger. So what happens is, when you have a child, if you can instill that work ethic in that child, because the DNA is going to kick in because you're a great fighter or a great writer or a great whatever, right? So
Yeah, artist. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
that child is able to take those lessons that you instill in them young, because I believe we kind of talked about this. When you start sports at an age like 4, 5, 6, 7, you pick up on so many nuances and you learn the game so early that by time you're 8, you're not learning the game, you're practicing for skill, opposed to somebody who start off at, let's just say you start off your freshman year of high school. Well, from your freshman year to your senior year, you actually learning the nuances of the game, so you're not really able to know how to play until college and really put your skills on display. So right now, your skills are on display, and a lot of things come second nature to you. It's just like breathing or just like standing up to walk. You don't have to think about it because you started so young and you had that great structure from your dad.
Yeah, man, I agree. It's fighting for me is definitely second nature. There's never been a time where, like, unless it's like a high flying like move or something like that, some acrobatic, where I look at it and it's foreign to me. It's all like you said, everything feels second nature for sure.
Yeah, man.
And with my dad, the reason I started fighting, man, was when I was 6 years old. My dad, he cornered MMA fighters with our Jiu Jitsu instructor Gustavo Machado. So they would go corner fighters together. And I remember when I was a kid, our instructor was out of town, so my dad had to corner this guy with another guy from the gym. This is back in the day before the UFC was popping like it is now. It wasn't nearly as big. It was like underground fighting type of shit. And I got to sit in the corner of the ring with my dad, and like our fighter, he won the first round, and it was like really cool. The crowd was cheering. I'm like a little kid seeing these guys fight. There's blood. I'm like, whoa, man, this is awesome. And then the second round, our fighter completely gasses out and just gets his face beaten in, dude. Like, he gets beat up bad, but he's a tough guy. He wouldn't give up. And the fight goes a distance, and he goes in the back and he ends up puking blood. He's like seizing out, like it looks like he's dying. And I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like, it as a little kid, this is just one of the most chaotic things I had ever seen. And we ended up going to the hospital, and the doctor was saying the dude might go into a coma, and it was just a crazy like moment for me as a kid to just take all in. And I just remember like the whole night thinking like, wow, I can't wait till I can do that. For some reason, that's just how I was. I was like, man, like it's like the highest highs and the lowest low, because while our guys puking up blood, their fighters thanking God and screaming to the crowd, and everyone's like, yeah. And, I don't know why, but at a young age, it just drew me in. And I was like, yep, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I remember making that decision at like 6 years old.
Yeah, man. So the bug hit you early and often. So like you say, you just born. You made the fight. And that story you just told me make me think of a saying that goes, no good deed goes unpunished. And you always, when you look at life, man, like how you was just saying, there's two sides of a coin. When they say no good deed goes unpunished, it's actually the irony that when you do good for someone else in the other sense is getting bad out of that situation. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like one guy is triumphant in a win, he's screaming to the crowd, and the other guy's like hanging on to a thread almost.
Yeah, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. It's a crazy thing, man. And I think with individual sports, especially stuff like boxing or fighting, where you're in a ring half naked, sometimes in front of millions of people, on national television, it's just one of the most vulnerable places you could ever be fighting. One of the most fighting is just one of the most primitive things a human can do. When you look at any sport and it reaches the highest level of conflict, this guy Eddie Mercado told me this. when you look at any sport, it reaches the highest level of conflict, like, and it gets the most competitive it possibly can. They fight. They resort to fighting. So to me, fighting is just the ultimate level of competition to, like, prove, people do sports to see who's better at something, and fighting is like the ultimate to me of just like competitiveness and competition.
100%, man. So, give me your Instagram again, and if you have a YouTube channel, give them that as well.
I don't have a YouTube channel yet. I'm still working on that. My Instagram is the Flying Saucer. Saucer is spelled Sausser. It's my last name. And could I give a shout out to some people?
Of course, man.
So I'd like to give a shout out to, like, all my family back home, all my friends, all my teammates from the gym. Shout out to my sponsor, Mitch Aguiar and Massive Industries, best supplements in the game. Shout out everyone from Gustavo Machado Jiu Jitsu. Shout out to my mom. Love you, Mom. Shout out to my girlfriend. Shout out to my sister and all y'all. Love y'all.
All right, man.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on here, man. And I look forward to interviewing you again, man, when you in the UFC. Don't forget, like, I need that interview. And by that time, we'll probably be able to do a video interview, man. And you'll be able to talk about your journey and how it felt to have your first UFC fight and how it feels to win your first UFC championship and things of that nature.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome.
For sure. So, drop below in the comments and let me know what you think. Also, it's free. So click the like button, the subscribe button, and check out Hip Hop Artists of the Week in the description. Peace.